Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. I stood in the kitchen, stirring the simmering pot of marinara sauce, a mundane task that gave me a sense of normalcy after a long day at work. Mary had been acting distant lately, but I chalked it up to her stress. Work had been demanding, and we'd fallen into a routine that made communication feel more like a checklist than a conversation. Tonight, though, I was determined to change that. I'd planned to surprise her with her favorite meal, a bottle of wine, and maybe a movie afterward, hoping to reconnect. The front door opened, and I heard Mary's familiar footsteps, followed by the sound of her dropping her keys into the bowl on the console table. I turned, smiling. "Hey, you're just in time," I called out. "I made your favorite. Figured we could have a quiet night in." She hesitated in the doorway, her face half hidden in the shadows. "We need to talk, Alex," she said, her voice unusually tense. I felt my stomach tighten. Those words, "we need to talk," rarely led anywhere good. I tried to keep my tone light. "Okay, sure. What's on your mind?" Mary walked over to the kitchen table and sat down, her movements slow, almost deliberate, as if she were bracing herself. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," she began, avoiding my eyes. "About us. About me. About what I want out of life." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "I feel trapped, Alex. Like I'm suffocating," she admitted, her eyes finally meeting mine. There was a desperation in them, a vulnerability I hadn't seen in years. "We've been together for so long, but I feel like I've lost myself along the way." I took a step back, trying to process what she was saying. "Lost yourself? What are you talking about? We've built a life together. We've shared everything. How can you say you're lost?" "It's not about you," she said quickly, as if that would somehow lessen the blow. "It's about me. I need to figure out who I am outside of this marriage. That's not something you do by throwing everything away." I snapped, unable to keep the anger from boiling over. "You don't just walk out because things get hard." "I'm not walking out," she insisted, her voice rising. "I'm asking for space. For the chance to explore who I am, what I want. And you think dating someone else is the way to do that?" I spat, my voice dripping with disbelief. "Is this about someone specific, Mary? Is there already someone in the picture?" Mary fell silent, her eyes dropping to her lap. That silence was the answer I needed. "It's David, isn't it?" I demanded, my hands curling into fists at my sides. "The guy from your yoga class. The one you always say is just a friend." She flinched, and that slight movement was all the confirmation I needed. "It's not what you think," she began, but I cut her off, my patience snapping like a brittle thread. "Don't lie to me, Mary," I hissed. "Don't you dare lie to me now. After everything we've been through, after all the years I've stood by you. Is this how you repay me? By running off with some other guy the moment you feel a little bored?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I was too far gone to care. "I never meant to hurt you, Alex," she whispered. I feel like there's something missing, and I need to find it. And yes, David, he's part of that. But this isn't about him. It's about me. About us." "Don't give me that crap," I shot back, my voice raw. "You're using him as your escape, and you know it." Silence fell between us, heavy and suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, each beat like a hammer driving nails into the coffin of our marriage. Mary took a shaky breath, wiping her eyes. "I'm going out tonight. With David," she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I thought it was only fair to tell you." I stared at her, feeling something inside me break. "Fair?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You think this is fair? You think telling me you're going on a date with another man makes this any easier?" "It's better than lying to you," she said, and there was a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "You deserve the truth, Alex. Even if it hurts. I took a step back, unable to look at her any longer. You know what, Mary? Do whatever the hell you want. Go find yourself or whatever excuse you're using to justify this. But don't expect me to be here waiting when you finally realize what you've thrown away. She opened her mouth to respond but seemed to think better of it. Instead, she stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked toward the door. I watched her go, my hands shaking, my mind reeling. And when the door finally clicked shut behind her, I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me gasping in the silence. For a long moment, I stood there, staring at the spot where she'd been, trying to make sense of it all. Then, with a sudden surge of rage, I grabbed the pot of marinara sauce and hurled it against the wall. It exploded in a violent splash of red, streaking across the white paint, the harsh smell of tomatoes and spices filling the air. I stood there, chest heaving, my hands trembling, and the only thought that ran through my mind was that I'd never be able to wash that stain out. The remnants of dinner lay strewn across the floor, a chaotic reflection of my turmoil. I spent that night in a haze, drowning in whiskey, trying to numb the raw ache in my chest. As the alcohol coursed through my veins, my mind raced. The moment Mary walked out, she had shattered the fragile illusion of our life together, and I could no longer pretend everything would be okay. By morning, the sun filtered through the window, casting harsh light on the debris of my shattered evening. I stared at the splattered marinara on the wall, feeling a deep sense of loss mixed with a flicker of determination. I couldn't just sit back and let her have the life she wanted while I fell apart. It was time to take control. After scrolling through rental listings for hours, I found a condo not too far from our old house. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, a fresh start. By noon, I had signed the lease. The sense of power surged within me, and I couldn't help but smile as I pictured Mary's reaction when she realized I wasn't going to just sit by and let her upend my life. That evening, I returned home from work, my heart racing with anticipation. Mary had been unusually quiet since her date with David, and I sensed she was wrestling with her choices. I had decided to confront her with my decision as soon as she stepped through the door. When she finally arrived, I stood in the living room, my arms crossed, waiting. She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "Alex, you're home early. What's going on?" I gestured toward the boxes stacked against the wall. "I rented a place," I announced, trying to sound casual but feeling the weight of my own words. "What do you mean, you rented a place?" Her brow furrowed in confusion. "You can't just decide to move out without talking to me, why not? You've made it clear that you're exploring your options, so why should I stick around?" I replied, my tone sharp. "I'm not going to be a backup plan while you figure out your life with David." Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Alex, please, can we talk about this?" "Talk about what?" "Your plan to date other men. To leave me behind." I felt my voice rising, fueled by the anger that had been simmering since our last conversation. "I'm not interested in being the husband who gets pushed aside while you have fun. If you want to explore, I'll explore too." "Explore?" she repeated, incredulity lacing her voice. "What does that even mean for you?" "I've already started," I shot back. "I've been on a few dates myself. If you can have David, I can have whoever I want. I refuse to be your second choice or your consolation prize." She opened her mouth to respond, but I could see her mind racing. "You think this will make me regret my choices?" "No, I think it's going to show you that I'm not going to be a doormat," I replied, feeling a sense of empowerment in my words. "You want freedom? You've got it. Just know that I won't be waiting for you to come back." Mary crossed her arms, her expression shifting to something more defensive. "And what do you think will happen when you start dating other people? You really think that's going to hurt me?" I shrugged, my heart racing. "Honestly, I hope it does. You wanted to break the marriage, so I'm going to let you see what that really means." She sighed, her frustration palpable. "This is just petty, Alex. You're acting like a child, and you're acting like someone who doesn't care about the life we built together," I retorted. I'm moving out. That's my decision. You can do whatever you want, but don't expect me to be here waiting for you to come back when you realize you made a mistake. Alex, please, think about this, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I never wanted it to come to this. I didn't either, but here we are, I said, my tone icy. You had your chance to think about this before running off with someone else. Now I have to think about what's next for me. As I turned away, the door creaking shut behind her echoed like a finality. I felt a mixture of triumph and sorrow, triumph for taking control of my life, but sorrow for what we had lost. The next few days were a blur of packing, signing paperwork, and setting up my new condo. I painted the walls a bold shade of blue, hoping the color would bring some life into the sterile space. I filled the fridge with beer and takeout containers, reveling in the idea of living my life on my own terms. As I settled in, I downloaded a dating app. My heart raced with anticipation. I'd spent so long focused on Mary that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted by someone new. The thrill of swiping through profiles, messaging potential matches, and planning outings felt like a breath of fresh air. I was reclaiming my life, and it felt good. One evening, after a particularly exhilarating date with a woman named Lisa, I returned home and saw Mary's name flash across my phone. I hesitated before answering. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Can we talk? She asked, her tone softer, almost pleading. About what? I asked, feigning nonchalance. Your adventures with David. Or maybe how you've come to terms with the fact that I'm moving out. Alex, stop, she said, exasperated. I didn't call to argue. I just want to understand what's happening between us. I leaned against the counter, a smirk playing on my lips. What's happening is that I'm finally living my life. It's liberating. Living your life, she echoed, hurt seeping into her voice. You mean throwing our marriage away? Is that really what you want? No, it's what you wanted, Mary. You set the stage. I'm just playing my part. Her silence hung in the air, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in her mind. You don't have to be cruel, Alex. I'm not being cruel, I'm being realistic. You made your choice, and I'm not going to let you make me feel small while you figure out your new life. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice breaking. Too late for that, isn't it? I replied, my heart hardening. Goodbye, Mary. I hung up before she could respond, feeling a mix of satisfaction and lingering pain. I was moving forward, ready to embrace the new life I was building, but the shadow of what we had still loomed large. It would take time, but I was finally ready to face the future, alone. The weeks following my move were both exhilarating and disorienting. I had finally taken a stand, but the aftermath of Mary's departure hung over me like a thick fog. Every time I walked into my new condo, the starkness of the space reminded me of the life I had left behind. The walls were bare, and the air felt empty. Yet, the freedom of being alone offered a rush I hadn't expected. I started seeing other women, diving headfirst into the dating scene. My first date with Lisa had been a whirlwind of laughter and light-hearted conversation. She was vibrant and fun, a stark contrast to the weight of my past. I didn't want to overthink it, I simply wanted to enjoy the moment. But as I navigated this new chapter, I found myself caught in a delicate balance between moving on and the lingering emotions tied to my past. The encounters with Mary had become less frequent but still emotionally charged. Each time we met, I struggled to maintain the upper hand, fighting the urge to let her see how deeply her choices had affected me. One Saturday afternoon, I was in the middle of setting up my new living space when my phone buzzed. It was Mary, asking if she could come by. My heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. I hadn't seen her in a few weeks, and part of me was curious to know how she was doing, while another part of me wanted to keep the distance I'd established. Sure, I texted back, my hands shaking slightly. What's up? When she arrived, I tried to play it cool, casually leaning against the kitchen counter as if I hadn't been anticipating her visit. Hey, I said, forcing a smile. What's going on? Mary looked different, more put together than I remembered. Her hair fell perfectly around her shoulders, and her clothes hugged her in all the right places. I wanted to see how you were settling in, she said, her voice softer than I'd expected. I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. It's coming along. Just trying to make it feel like home. I gestured toward the empty wall where I planned to hang some artwork. Still need to figure out what to do with that. She stepped closer, glancing around the room. It's nice. Different, she said, her eyes lingering on the unmade bed in the corner. Yeah, well, it's just me now. No need for a guest room, I replied, keeping my tone light. How's David? Her expression shifted, and I could see the weariness in her eyes. It's complicated, she admitted, her voice dropping. I thought it would be easy, but it's not. He's not you. I forced myself to breathe slowly, suppressing the urge to let her see how much that stung. I'm sure it's all part of the thrill, right? Dating someone new, figuring things out. She sighed, running a hand through her hair, a familiar gesture that tugged at my heartstrings. It's not as thrilling as I thought it would be. Sometimes I feel lost. Like I made a mistake. I tilted my head, feigning indifference. You wanted freedom, remember? You didn't want to feel tied down. Freedom doesn't feel like what I thought it would, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. I miss having someone I can rely on, someone who knows me. The moment hung heavy in the air. I wanted to remind her that she was the one who had walked away, that she had made her choice. But a part of me felt that old desire to reach out, to reassure her. Maybe you should have thought about that before you jumped into this, I replied, my tone firmer than I intended. Mary took a step closer, her eyes searching mine. You're right. I didn't think it through. But I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want to understand what happened to us. I thought you'd be okay with all of this. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. I'm figuring it out. But it's hard not to feel like I was replaced. You chose him, Mary. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with. I never wanted to replace you. I just wanted something different. I thought maybe I could find myself along the way. Have you? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from creeping into my voice. I don't know, she confessed. But I miss us. I miss our conversations. The way we used to laugh together. You can't just pick and choose the parts you like, Mary. That's not how this works, I said, shaking my head. You can't have it both ways. She looked at me, hurt and confused. I never wanted it to come to this. I never wanted to hurt you. I just needed space to breathe. Space. You've had plenty of it, I countered, crossing my arms defensively. And now look where we are. You've been on dates, and I'm just supposed to sit back and watch you figure things out. That's not fair, she said, frustration lacing her words. I thought you'd be happy for me, for both of us. You've moved on. I can see it. I shrugged, unwilling to give her any satisfaction. I'm not the one who chose this life. You did. I'm just adapting. Her expression fell, and I could see the realization sink in that she'd miscalculated my response. So, what now? Are we just going to keep avoiding each other until one of us makes a move? Why would you want to keep this going? I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. You wanted to be free. You don't get to come back and act like everything's fine. I'm not saying I want everything to go back to normal, she replied, her voice softening. I just want to find a way to coexist without all this tension. I took a moment, weighing my options. We can't pretend this didn't happen, Mary. You chose this path, and I'm not going to stand by while you figure out what you want from me. She looked down, her shoulders slumping. I know I messed up. But maybe we can find a middle ground. Something less than a marriage but more than strangers, a friends with benefits arrangement, then. I asked, the bitterness creeping back in. You think that's what I want? I don't know what you want, Alex, she exclaimed, throwing her hands up in frustration. But I know I don't want to lose you completely. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling torn. What do you expect from me? That I'll just be okay with the idea of you dating other men while I'm here. I want you in my life, Alex, she said, desperation evident in her voice. You've always been my anchor. I thought we could still have something even if it looks different now. I paused, her words hitting me harder than I anticipated. You want me around while you play house with someone else? It's not like that, she insisted. It's about finding balance. I just don't want to lose you altogether. As much as I wanted to reject her offer outright, I couldn't shake the feeling of longing that still resonated deep within me. I'll think about it, I finally said, my voice steady. But you need to understand that I won't be an afterthought in your life. Mary nodded, relief washing over her features. I can live with that, she said quietly. As she left, I felt a mixture of emotions swirling within me. I was cautiously stepping into uncharted territory, trying to maintain a delicate balance between letting her back into my life and guarding my heart against further pain. The idea of being friends with benefits felt complicated, but perhaps it was the only way forward. For now, it would have to be enough. The arrangement with Mary was an uncharted territory, a tightrope I found myself precariously balancing on. For weeks, we navigated this new dynamic, hanging out like old friends while threading carefully around the raw edges of our past. Our meetings were filled with laughter, shared stories, and the occasional physical intimacy, but the underlying tension always loomed. I felt the shift within myself as I began to embrace my newfound freedom. My dates with Lisa and other women became more frequent. Each encounter was a welcome distraction, a reminder that I was still desirable, that I could still connect with someone on a level I thought I had lost. Meanwhile, Mary seemed to struggle more with her choices than I had anticipated. She would text me occasionally, sharing snippets of her new life, but there was an underlying urgency in her messages, a desperation that left me feeling uneasy. One evening, after a particularly fun outing with Lisa, I returned home with a slight buzz and an air of confidence. I had forgotten how exhilarating it was to flirt, to feel the spark of attraction again. As I sat down on my couch, I noticed a message from Mary pop up on my phone. Can we talk? My heart raced. This was a familiar feeling, but it had shifted from despair to something more charged, more dangerous. I replied, sure, when, now. I hesitated for a moment before responding, come over. When Mary arrived, she seemed different, almost anxious, her hair a little disheveled and her cheeks flushed. I offered her a drink, and she declined, pacing the small living room instead. Alex, I've been thinking, she began, biting her lip, about our arrangement. What about it? I asked, leaning back against the couch, trying to appear relaxed. I don't know if it's working for me, she admitted, running a hand through her hair. I thought it would make things easier, but it's just confusing. Confusing how? I prodded, suppressing a smirk. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. This was your idea. She shot me a sharp look. It wasn't meant to be like this. I didn't think I'd miss you so much, or feel so lost. I raised an eyebrow. Lost? I thought you were finding yourself. I am. But it's not easy, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. I wanted to explore, but it feels like I'm just going through the motions without really knowing what I want. Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you? I replied, my tone laced with sarcasm. You're the one who walked away, remember? I know, and I regret it, she said, her voice trembling. But I thought I could make this work, that we could be casual. But every time we're together, I feel this pull back to you. Then maybe we shouldn't be hanging out at all, I suggested, trying to suppress the conflicting emotions rising within me. If it's that difficult for you, why put yourself through it? Mary stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. Because I don't want to lose you completely. I still care about you, Alex. I thought we could still have something meaningful, even if it's not the same. What do you want from me? I asked, feeling the tension between us crackle like electricity. You want me to wait while you figure this out? Because I'm not going to be your backup plan. No, that's not it, she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. I just want us to be able to communicate without all this baggage. I'm tired of pretending that everything is fine. I stood up, pacing the room, my heart racing. You don't get to dictate the terms of this, Mary. You made your choices. I'm the one trying to pick up the pieces. Her voice softened. And I want to help with that, but I need you to meet me halfway. I don't want to just be friends with benefits. I want us to be able to explore what this means, without all the pressure. Pressure. I scoffed, my anger rising. You're the one who wants to explore. I'm just trying to live my life. Exactly, she shot back, her voice rising. But every time we meet, I feel this tension, this pull back to what we had. It's not fair to either of us. Maybe it's too late to find that balance, I said, feeling the weight of her words. You had your chance, and now I'm just trying to move on. Are you really moving on, or are you just pretending? She asked, her gaze piercing through me. I see you out with other women, but are you actually happy? Or are you just trying to fill the void? Her question hit me hard. What do you want me to say? I shot back, frustration boiling over. I'm trying to make the best of a bad situation, just like you. Then let's stop pretending, she said, stepping closer. Let's be honest about what we feel and where we stand. I don't want to lose you completely, Alex. I took a deep breath, feeling the emotions swell within me. So what do you want? You want to come back to me, but what about David? What about your exploration? I want to know if there's still a chance for us, she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. I know I messed up, but I'm willing to fight for it. Are you? I paused, the question hanging in the air. I could feel the battle within me raging. A part of me wanted to jump back into the relationship we once had, while another part knew how badly she had hurt me. I don't know if I can trust you again, I admitted, my voice heavy with emotion. Mary took a step back, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I understand that. I really do. But can we at least try? Can we have an open conversation about where we both stand? I looked at her, torn between anger and longing. Fine. But this isn't going to be easy. You need to know that I won't just be waiting for you to figure it out. Agreed, she said, her tone steady. Let's just be honest with each other, without any pretense. As we continued to talk, I felt the boundaries of our relationship shifting again, the roles we had established blurring into something else entirely. The truth was, I missed her, her laughter, her presence, the way she could light up a room. But the pain of betrayal still stung, a constant reminder of what had been lost. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope as we laid everything out on the table. It was a tentative step back toward one another, but it was clear that navigating this new landscape would require caution and honesty. I wasn't ready to fully embrace her again, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance to find a new path forward. As the night wore on, I knew that this delicate balance would define our future. We were both willing to try, but the stakes were higher than ever. It was a role reversal, a shifting dynamic that left me feeling both exhilarated and terrified. What lay ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were both ready to confront our reality together.